Good morning, you're very welcome back to the show. Now, yesterday we spoke to 14-year-old Cara Darmody ahead of her 50-hour sleep-out protest outside Leinster House to advocate for better disability assessment services.
We did. We're going live to Leinster House now to see how Cara is getting along with her father. Mark, we're also joined in studio by Minister of State with Responsibility for Disability, Hildegarde Naughton. Thank you for joining us, Hildegarde. We'll be with you in just a minute, Minister. But Cara and Mark, thanks so much for joining us again. First of all, how did you get on overnight, Cara? Was it all okay?
I suppose, look, I got to sleep in the tent. I got maybe around 6.5 hours of sleep, but it was really, really tough. And my dad had to supervise me at all times. Like, my dad was up the whole night in the freezing cold and rain, and it was really, really tough.
Listen, we've been talking to you earlier this morning. We could see your hands are absolutely shaking. It was a cold, cold night for you both last night, but can you remind us, Cara, why you are doing this? Why you're sleeping in a tent outside Leinster House to raise awareness?
Because the three previous Taoiseachs promised me change, and they didn't, and they keep breaking the law, and that they're lawbreakers. And even though I've told them that they need to stop breaking the law, they haven't done that on the assessment of needs crisis. And now I'm going to be meeting Taoiseach Micheál Martin at 9 a.m. this morning, and I'm going to tell him that he needs to stop breaking the law, and that he needs to assess a timeline as to when he's going to stop breaking the law and apply more money to Cara's fund, because there's a blueprint for success there, because I've gotten success before, and I know that I can win this battle again, and I'm not going to stop until I win. And look, if that meant sleeping out last night, then I'm all here for it. And while sleeping outside last night was really tough, it's not. What determines me is that I'll get to help as many people as I possibly can in the end.
Obviously, this is because of your brothers Neil and John. Mark, what's been the reaction to yourself and Cara's protest?
Oh, sure, look, it's been absolutely huge. I suppose, look, the first thing I do want to say, I want to thank the guards who were here last night, who minded her. They brought her hot water bottles, covered the tent again, swept the street here for her to make sure everything was clean. I cannot thank them enough for their kindness and for their effort here. Yeah, the actual reaction to the protest has just been absolutely huge. You know, thank God, I think a lot of people kind of let her sleep last night, so there was a lot of whispering around her tent last night, but unfortunately we got heavy rain last night, and you know, she didn't really hear it or feel it, but yeah, and again, look, thanks to the guards, because they all got soaked here again last night, all in the effort to mind her, so, you know.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you know, Cara's a 14-year-old on the street. Unfortunately, it's a different issue, but there's too many 14-year-olds on the street. Minister, looking at Cara and her dad there, outside your place of work, to try to get people to talk about this,
in her
you know,
Winnie the Pooh pyjamas.
Yeah.
You know, it's sad.
Yeah, no, Cara, good morning, Cara. She shouldn't have to. Nobody should have to protest outside the gates of Leinster House. And what I want to do as Minister with Responsibility for Disability, sitting at that cabinet table, is to make sure that we are addressing and getting through, not only getting through those waiting lists for assessment of needs, but ensuring that children right across, and adults, the country, are getting access to those speech and language therapists, occupational therapists, physiotherapists, and making sure that people with disabilities have access to the services that they require.
So currently there are 15,296. When you were here not that long ago with it, it was less than that, around 14,000 on the waiting list. And the HSE, their numbers are 25,000 by the end of the year. So this problem has worsened exponentially in just a few weeks. Who can take responsibility for this? Does the buck stop with you?
Yeah, the buck stops with government, with myself as Minister with Responsibility for Disability and Minister Norma Foley. So what I am absolutely determined to do is to not only tackle this waiting list. There's three things we need to do here. Reduce the waiting list, look at how the assessment of needs process works. Also making sure there's not a draw on assessment of needs unnecessarily. For example, if someone is applying for housing supports or domiciliary care allowance, there is sometimes a culture or an ask sometimes from other state agencies, services, to provide an assessment of need for those services. You do not require that. You don't need them. So, for example, for domiciliary care allowance, it was on the application form. If you have an assessment of need, please insert it here. So that's gone. We've removed that. That's only one small part of it. We also need to increase the number of occupational therapists, speech and language therapists right across the board. So we're doing that through our higher education system. So we have 150 extra therapists now since last September going through the system. We'll have at least that again this September.
So
we're looking at domestic
many...
and international recruitment as well, looking at how we can attract people who are qualified abroad so that they will be qualified and be able to come home here as well as making it more attractive for people to work.
So at the end of 2023, it was 8,893 people looking for this. It then is at 15,000. We're expecting to be at 25. You're saying we want to reduce this. It's going the wrong direction. How many people are currently employed as AON or clinical disability leads?
Within the sector of therapists, we have about 1,800 across the sector. And just to say, what we therapists across the country, what we want to do is
just doing these assessments.
Well, there are assessment officers as well, and this is what we need to look at as part of the assessment of need process, how it works. At the moment, the average time an assessment of needs takes is on average 30 hours. It can take up to 90 hours. So we want to look at that whole process, how that works, through working with clinicians, the HSE, and my department is engaging with that at the moment. If legislative reform is needed, we will absolutely consider that. But it's really important to say we will not deny anybody their statutory right to have an assessment of need. But this is not just about tackling the waiting list, because what I don't want is, OK, we deal with the waiting list and then there's another backlog that's coming down the track. We also need to look at the health system where there is no wrong door.
We need to look at these things. The waiting list is growing. How long is it going to take to look at these things and put them into place? Because this needs action now.
So what we're doing is, as I said, we're looking at the assessment of need process itself and how that can be changed. The draw on assessment of needs where people are being asked for them, where they shouldn't be asked for them. We're looking at the retention and recruitment of therapists.
Looking at what are you doing?
So what we
is the timeline? Do you have a timeline for this?
So there is a cabinet committee for disability that I sit on. The Taoiseach, the Taoiseach, Simon Harris sits on, Minister Foley, Minister for Health. Assessment of need is an absolute top priority. We had a meeting only 2 weeks ago. Myself and Minister Foley are going to report back to the leaders within the next few weeks in relation to what we can do around the assessment of need. I want action on this, so we're going to be meeting very regularly, as we are. I'm meeting with Bernard Loster, head of the HSE, because we need clinicians involved in this as well. And everywhere I travel, right across the country, it's all about access to services. Looking at therapy assistance, for example, not just third-level institutions. Looking at retention and recruitment of therapists within the system as well. And then also, this is really important, when somebody turns up at a primary care centre, a CAMS, or a CDNT, that's the children's disability teams across the country, they need to be signposted straight away, not put onto a waiting list per se, but if you need access to a therapist, that you need to be signposted.
Like triaged straight away to kind of look at what we can do with all of this.
You don't have to go through the assessment of need process, because what's happening is people get their assessment and think that's great, this is the long-awaited assessment, but they're put on another waiting list. So it is a complex issue, but I want to assure parents listening today, because I've come from special education where we had, I suppose, it's the same issues, access to therapies. We need to address this. We have full employment, and I suppose the supply of therapists is the big issue here as well.
And retention and keeping people in the country. But as you say all this, you're like, OK, we're going to meet in a few weeks' time. Then we've got a summer break coming up.
There's no summer break in relation to this, can I tell you? We are absolutely, every week, myself, Minister Foley, the Taoiseach, the Taoiseach, that this is
we can't have a timeline, can we, of when you're going to go into the HSE and go, do you know what, that we've got paper processes here, because we don't have any sort of computerisation happening for all of these sorts of things. We don't have the staff that are here. We had Ciara O'Reilly, who's a lecturer in education and who has a special needs child, here yesterday, her daughter, who's had her assessment of needs, but she has gotten absolutely no therapies in the 2.5 years since she's had the assessment of needs. So even if they get that, there's nothing happening afterwards.
So we are, as I say, coming back within the next few weeks to the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach in relation to an update on this. Also, in relation to access to therapies, when I was in special education, I started the pilot in Dublin and Cork schools where therapists go into special schools. Minister Helen McEntee is now rolling that out to all special schools across the country. It's part of this access to therapies for the most vulnerable children, so that will help the system as well. But around timelines, so we're coming back to the leaders in the next few weeks. And by, I suppose, September, October, I want to act on this year. This is not going to be easy. If this was a money problem...
We're going to be over 20,000 at that stage.
Yeah, if it was a money problem, this would have been sorted.
Oh, we know that. We know the government has lots of money.
This is about therapies, therapists, assistant therapies, looking at innovative ways.
What countries are you following? Like Netherlands, for instance, they have a multidisciplinary one-stop clinics where everything is under one roof. Children can go in and get all the services straight away. At the minute, in Ireland, we don't even have digital records. We don't have referral systems. We're all doing the same jobs and copying each other and having to wait to tick all the boxes.
And that's why having the therapists going into the special schools where the children
they'll
are most
refer
complex.
on to somebody else.
No, what's happening is, at the moment, it's happening, and Minister McEntee is rolling this out to all special schools across the country. Therapists will be going in, working directly with the children. Also, as you absolutely correctly outlined, this no wrong door approach. So if a child goes into primary care, they are directed to the service they need. We need to be in that space as well. I'm also working on the National Disability Strategy. This is the all-of-government approach. Whether you're a disabled person looking for housing, looking for healthcare, every single government department needs to be feeding into the strategy, which I will be publishing over the next few weeks as well. I know this is a huge issue. This is all about ensuring that children get access early, even in the primary care setting, when you're a baby and you're not meeting your milestones.
But you also know they are not at the moment.
Yeah, I am absolutely, and we're failing children. I'm not sitting here this morning saying there's not a problem. There is, but I want to assure you that I am working night and day to make sure that we tackle this issue, not only reduce the waiting lists, but make sure that people are getting access to these therapies at an earlier stage.
And in conjunction with that, I suppose, when you're sitting there and we're looking at all the newspapers, and we know parents have done a protest themselves. Like Cara's 14 years old, so there's a lot of spotlight on what's happening here. But parents have been sitting outside Leinster House asking for places for their children in school when we've got 100 children who can't even get places, and we're finding that they can't get into schools. Like, this is a multi-systematic failure, and it all comes back to this, whether it is the therapies or being denied basic rights to go to school.
So what we've done on that is, and I've come from special education, and I set up that task force in relation to Dublin 15, for example, because that was a real hotspot. We have 2,700 now extra special school places this coming September, and that includes 400 special classes. So we are increasing the number of special classes, and also we're working on a common application process where parents don't have to be applying to multiple schools for their child. So all of this is happening, and we're moving in the right direction. Minister McEntee is now Minister for Education, and she is increasing again the resourcing around special education classes. And I want to support as well in what I'm doing, so it's all connected, is what I'm saying.
Minister, and I totally feel all this, but honestly, as you said, we're at full employment and we've got people leaving the country, hundreds of thousands of people in Australia now. It's great to put things in place. How are we going to staff this?
So the staffing, it's been innovative around it. It's recruitment at an international level, domestically, looking at new ways of doing things like therapy assistants. We have the National Council for Special Education at the moment. They've got therapists who go into schools working directly with teachers, okay? Not so much with one-to-one with the students. So you have the NCSE's therapy supports. You'll have the Minister Helen McEntee's approach now, where you'll have the therapists going in directly into the special schools and eventually into mainstream schools, working directly with children, and then around the recruitment and retention and making the job of therapists more attractive. And we've done that as well through the WRC and pay. So this is a multifaceted approach, and it is not going to be, I'm not saying this is easy, but I can tell you I am going to work really hard to make sure that we get those services to the children.
Just want to go back to Cara and Mark outside Leinster House at the minute. You're hearing there the Minister for Disabilities speaking. Mark, Cara, you're going to be meeting the Taoiseach later on this morning. This planning that has hopefully been put in place, not really a concrete timeline. What would you like to say? What are you going to take from this to put to the Taoiseach?
Yeah, I suppose, look, the main thing is this. I have a simple question for him today. Is he going to declare this a national emergency or not? Because it is. It's a yes or no answer. It's very, very simple. Because we've heard all this talk before. We've heard it from 3 different Taoiseach before about what they're going to do and all the great plans. They failed dramatically. In my opinion, Cara has now become the face of this issue. If they cannot convince her of their plans, then anything that they say isn't going to wash with the public. And I think that's been established by the attention that this has got. So that really is the question. We want them to declare this a national emergency, and then to, like every agency, then will have to act in a different way. But we don't expect them to say that today. But it is a very, very simple question. Are you going to declare it a national emergency, yes or no?
Minister, we've declared homelessness a national emergency and the figures keep on going up. Do you think this is a national emergency?
I'm treating this with absolute, this is the top priority for government. It's not just me. And we can name it what we want, but what we need is action. And that's what was said in the Dáil last night. That's what I'm hearing right across the country.
So do you think it's a national emergency then?
It's an absolute priority. You can call it what you want, but we are absolutely working so hard on this with the HSE, with government departments, to make sure that children have access to therapists.
Okay.
And
so Mark has asked, that's his one question, you can call it what you like. You're obviously not saying that this morning. We will see if the Taoiseach does that.
We're acting in an emergency, whatever you can. For me, it's about getting the job done.
Okay.
It's about getting through these waiting lists, making sure that children have access to the therapies that they need.
Cara and Mark Darmody, best of luck at your meeting with the Taoiseach Micheál Martin at 9 o'clock. And Minister of State with responsibility for disability, Hildegarde Naughton, thank you so much for joining us this morning.